Welcome, everybody, to the House of Hustle podcast on Sports Radio 810. We are presented, as always, by Charlie Hustle. I am Jared Sutton. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Stephen St. John. We got a lot to cover today, Stephen. We haven't done a pod in a while. A lot to follow up with the college basketball excitement with the tournament. A lot of fun with watching March Madness this year. And then we're gearing up for the NBA playoffs.
That's right.
A lot of fun.
So I saw something that I wanted to ask you because, look, I love basketball, but for the past couple of years, like whenever the Big 12 SEC challenge would happen, there was like maybe always like one or two matchups like, oh, I like that, and then the rest are like,
Mm-hmm.
and like Missouri had Iowa State this past year, and that was good, but I never really got matchups that I got super excited about, and I guess since Mizzou had played Iowa State pretty recently, I wasn't really enthralled with it, even though I liked the way the game went. And so when the Big 12 SEC challenge went away, I wasn't heartbroken. Okay, and so then it's the Big 12 Big East challenge, and boy, let me tell you, even though as a Mizzou fan I ain't got a dog in the fight, these matchups are way better than what we saw in the Big 12 SEC challenge. Like, there's at least 6 or 7 must-watch games for me. And so I wanted to kind of run down these games. And there's like 4 or 5-star games. But it also kind of got in my head that, everyone just defers now to Big 12 is the best basketball conference. Big 12 is the best basketball conference. Well, now that UConn just won a championship, and I'm looking at the Big East, I'm like, Is there, and this is a great time to have this challenge. Is there a question here? So listen to some of these matchups, and I want you to tell me what you think. Texas Tech at Butler. These are a couple of teams that have, over the last decade or so, been in the national championship game.
Yeah.
All right? And so they bring some juice to the matchup. Texas Tech and Butler. Creighton at Oklahoma State. Creighton was just in the Elite Eight, I thought they were going to the Final Four. Oklahoma State historically is a very good basketball program, but that's got some juice. Creighton is a hell of a program. Iowa State at DePaul, you have to go back to, years and years for DePaul to be a basketball power. So that's one of them that's like, Iowa State's terrific, but man, if they could ever get DePaul back up and running in Chicago, you can see it, right?
No question.
I remember there was a great game that I went to at Mizzou when DePaul played at Mizzou during the Kareem Rush era. So it would have been Quentin Richardson at DePaul would have been the star player there.
Yeah.
I can't remember
exactly. That was when they had a loaded team.
Right, but it was an exciting game and a loaded team. And I think Kareem Rush went for 30-something, and they won.
That was a fun team.
So I'm trying to talk up DePaul, but that's not today's DePaul. Houston, Big 12 at Xavier.
That's a fun matchup.
Good God.
That's
a 5-star matchup.
Samson back in the Big 12 is great. Sean Miller back in college basketball in the Big East is great too.
Which coach do you think there's a coaching matchup that would involve more sweat?
I think Sean Miller just takes the cake on that in general.
He's in it. Yeah. So St. John's at West Virginia, and maybe you're thinking, well, on paper, that does look like a great matchup. Screw the teams. Rick Pitino versus Bob Huggins. Just have them meet at center court and yell at each other or something, right?
Yeah. Have them do their post games.
Right.
Have maybe do a pregame, like an NBA style pregame media availability.
They should have coach cams on the screen constantly.
Let's do some mic up. Well, by the way,
mic them up.
And the Big East, they always have their games on Fox Sports. So the Big East does this thing where in league play, and the Big Ten does this too, because the Big Ten is also doing games through the Fox Sports those channels. They have their coaches mic'd up. It is fantastic, and they have the NBA on NBC like theme music going in their pregame. They do a full pregame show that is big time. It's all I love their coverage because they get to elaborate on some of these coaches. It's a lot of fun. So just a quick tidbit there.
TCU, great program now. At Georgetown, they go out and they get Cooley from Providence, and so they're trying to resurrect their basketball tradition. 5-star matchup here. Texas at Marquette and Shaka Smart.
Yeah, I love that storyline.
That's
Love
a great
that.
storyline.
Marquette was great last year, coach of the year. Yeah.
There you go. That's good. That could have been a Final Four matchup.
Yeah, no doubt.
Providence led by Kimmy English.
Let's go.
At Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, let's go.
Let's go. I'd like to go.
You're saying, let's go.
I would like to get in the car and go to that.
Kim
yes.
English, if you watch this or listen to this podcast, this is your first ticket request from us.
Yeah.
We want tickets right behind your bench at Oklahoma. We will help you. Villanova at Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, like, if you're a K-State fan, how quick you get to buy those tickets? Yeah, we got Villanova coming to our house. Let's go. And then but Seton Hall at Baylor, but still, Seton Hall. They've had
good teams. They've had good teams.
But so I mean, who's the stronger basketball conference right now, top to bottom?
Well, I think there's two interesting things here because obviously with Houston, joining the Big 12 and what the Big 12 is going to look like in basketball for just that 1 year, I believe, is going to be really interesting. Now, Houston obviously is with Coach Sampson, the tradition that they've started to build and the program they've built. That's a really fascinating just situation with Houston joining the Big 12. I love that. When you look at the Big East, they have the national champion now in the Big East. Villanova has won multiple national championships. When you look at the history of the old Big East as well, and what we used to talk about with the Big East, back in the day, that I think they were back in the Kimball Walker days. That was when the Big East was the Big East, the original Big East. There's a 30 for 30 on the original Big East. I think that is the most fun conference of basketball, and I think the Big East knows they're trying to get back to that, and they're trying to get back to being that staple of a basketball league. And you look at some of the hires that have been made. I mean, obviously, I'd love to see Coach A at St. John's, but Rick Pitino at St. John's come back. It's a great storyline for college basketball with Rick Pitino coming back to the Big East. I think my boy Kim English at Providence is what a hire for them. So excited for Kim. Like, I think the Big East is just going straight. The trajectory of that league is even higher, and they just won a national championship.
This challenge ain't no joke.
It's no joke. And the Big 12 is still the Big 12, but so much is made of the Big 12 being the best conference. And, the NCAA tournament, I think sometimes we take too much into consideration of, teams getting knocked out, and the Big Ten's had great leagues, and they have not performed well in the NCAA tournament. So this is such a great matchup because, yes, the two leagues are operating at such a high level, and the Big East, I think, has a case to be made of being the best league in college basketball. I think the Big 12 has a case as well. That's what's going to make this matchup a lot of fun.
So we'll look forward to that. That's just another reason to be excited about college basketball coming up next season. But let's spend some time on the NBA because this is great timing for us to have this episode of House of Hustle because we're getting through the play-in games. Is that because I had people ask me like why do they even do this? Why not just have the 1 through 8 seeds? And, like, do you like play-in games? Do you like this format?
I love it because I think what the NBA really wanted to address is similar to how the National Football League operates, where you want excitement and thrill towards the end of the regular season before you get to the playoffs. And you want, that level of with the playoffs in the NBA, it's obviously the best of 7, but when you have the play-in, it's very similar to like wild card round, survive in advance, kind of that NCAA tournament feel where you lose, you're done. And I think there's some excitement around that, especially for teams that want to try to have a chance to get into the playoffs. I think you can always look at, I think for the West, it was the margin of error was just razor thin in terms of the West and jockeying for the 6th seed and getting out of the play-in, making the playoffs like Golden State did, because Golden State was in the play-in for much of the second half of the season. They were dealing with injuries, and there were a lot of teams that had a case to be made to get into the 6th. Even the Clippers were sort of falling there with Paul George getting hurt. They weren't playing well, and then all of a sudden they kind of take off. They get to the 5. I think that's what makes it such a entertaining and fascinating. The West was more than the East just because of playoff positioning and the play-in and who was going to be hosting a play-in game. So much was made at the last game that Sunday. There were so many games going on that had drastic implications on the Western Conference playoff format, and that's what the league wants. They want that type of exposure and interest for the fans, that level of excitement, the drama of that, to close the regular season and the play-in. That's why I love it. It's great for the fans. You don't want to be in the play-in, and this year in the West, you lose a couple games. We lost a couple buzzer beaters, and we could have easily been in the 6th spot and been out of the play-in. And then, we end up being the 9 seed. So anything can happen when you look at some of these games, and it's what makes it fun for fans. And that's what the league is wanting. They're wanting more of an emphasis on their regular season games, particularly closing the season and making that exciting for fans.
So we know we have the 2 8-seed matchups, and, like you said, win or go home. In the East, it's the Bulls and the Heat. In the West, it's the Thunder and the Timberwolves, who will end up as the number 8 seed in the East and the West based on these matchups.
So I think from a matchup standpoint, like what the Hawks did to the Miami Heat in terms of rebounding, it was wild to really watch, honestly. I mean, the Miami Heat, they're such a talented team. But what we saw from the Atlanta Hawks, I mean, the rebounding margin was unbelievable. For the Atlanta Hawks to have 63 rebounds and Clint Capella having 21 of those rebounds, they just absolutely dominated the game on the glass and won a game, on the road in Miami. Miami's still, a very good team. They're obviously very talented. I think when you look at this game with Miami and what they're going to go up against, I look at their roster, and Bam Adebayo's got to probably give them a little bit more offensively. I think the bench, Kyle Lowry was really good in that game. He had 33 in that Hawks game coming off the bench. Can he play at that caliber and at that level? He's got to score the ball at a really high level. But they really didn't. Like Tyler Hero was really good. They just didn't get enough, I think, from like Jimmy Butler going 6 for 19. A lot of his production was at the free throw line. I know he had 9 assists. Miami's just not playing all that well. And I think when you look at this game against the Bulls, like the Bulls came back in that game against the Toronto Raptors, and my gosh, that second half was so impressive of them just being in full attack mode. Had a great second half. They were terrible in the first half. And then they turned it on. They were led by Zach LaVine, who is a terrific talent, elite player. And then DeMar DeRozan was great as well. Caruso gives them a great burst in terms of their defensive coverages. He's an elite defender.
DeRozan's daughter was great screaming.
Yeah, she was too. So I like in this matchup, I would say that I give the edge to Chicago to pull the upset. But with that being said, the better roster and the more firepower is the Miami Heat. That's what makes this matchup so intriguing, and it's a 7-10 matchup. So it's a really fascinating matchup. When you look at the other side of the bracket, you look at the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is a matchup based off, the size factor. And Rudy Gobert, is he going to play? Like, it's a really interesting storyline of is he still going to be suspended? But I think with Minnesota and Karl Anthony Towns and some of the shooting, too, that Minnesota has, I like Minnesota in this matchup. Now, look, Oklahoma City, they're playing with house money right now, and they're playing free. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was very good against us the other night, as was Josh Giddey. Those are 2 younger players. I still think Jalen Williams, who's going to be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year, he has had a great rookie year. He's out of Santa Clara. Really, really long, athletic combo wing. And look, OKC, they played really well against us. They deserve to advance and deserve to play Minnesota. And that, to me, is a matchup where I think Minnesota should take care of business. And I think Minnesota's probably kicking themselves over that Laker game where they didn't close. And, Towns is a big part of that. Mike Conley's a big part of that, but Anthony Edwards was not good in the Laker game. He's 3-17, and he is too good of a player, and I don't expect Anthony to play that way in this game against Oklahoma City. And I do think Minnesota's bench, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who we had in New Orleans, very good role player. When he's good, he is such a punch off the bench to give you some offensive production. He's got really good size and can shoot it. So I'll give Minnesota the edge in this game against OKC at home.
Okay, so the matchups in the first round, in the West, we're going to see the number 1 seed Denver taking on the winner of the game between Minnesota and OKC. The 4-5 matchup is Phoenix and the LA Clippers. The 3-6, Sacramento and Golden State. And then that 2-7 matchup is John Morant in Memphis against LeBron James and the LA Lakers. You can pick only one.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite matchup of these 4 series in the West in the first round?
My favorite matchup by far is the Golden State matchup with Sacramento, and there's so many storylines here. Particularly Mike Brown being the head coach at Sacramento, was an assistant under Steve Kerr. The Kings have had a great year, and they're a very talented team. They're led by De'Aaron Fox. They have really young talent in Keegan Murray, who's an excellent shooter, great three-point shooter. Domantas Sabonis, who they got in a trade. That trade's looking pretty good. That was a pretty, the trade they made with Tyrese Halliburton. That was a trade that got a lot of ridicule, but ends up being a really good trade for the Kings because Sabonis has been so good for them as a big. They also acquired Kevin Huerter, who's been very good. The bench conversation, I think, really is an interesting one because the Kings have a really good bench. Their offense is really predicated off ball movement, and they got a lot of guys that can stretch it and score it. Malik Monk's been really good for them off the bench. With that being said, this is the Golden State Warriors. These are the champs. This is Steph Curry. This is Klay Thompson. This is
welcome
Draymond
back to the postseason, Sacramento.
Yeah, and welcome back, and you get Steph and the Golden State Warriors. And I think a big piece of this too is Andrew Wiggins coming back. He's been banged up, he's been hurt, and they expect him to play. I'm curious, what he looks like. There'll probably be some rust there, but he was huge for the Golden State Warriors in their run last year. He was kind of the unsung hero. I mean, so much is made of Steph and Klay and Draymond for sure. Jordan Poole, my gosh, you got Jordan Poole. That's, I think, right in the conversation with Steph and Draymond in terms of his ability to take over a game. And Jordan Poole wasn't, I don't think Jordan played all that well in the finals last year, but Andrew Wiggins did. Andrew Wiggins was great for Golden State. So, I mean, they add him back, and at full strength, Golden State is so dangerous. I see this game going 6 or 7. I'll give the edge to Golden State, though. And I think Kings fans hate to hear it, but there's going to be a lot of people picking the upset just because of what the Golden State championship pedigree is. And Sacramento hasn't been here in so long. And a lot of these guys with the Kings, it's their first time being in this. It's their first time being in the playoff format, and they got to go up against a group that's got 130 playoff appearances. That's pretty tough to overcome.
It's a tough ask. Okay, over in the East, the number 1 seed Milwaukee will take on the winner of the Miami-Chicago game we talked about. 4-5 matchup, Cleveland and the Knicks. The 3-6, the Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn. And then the 2-7 should be an interesting series between Boston and Atlanta. Okay, so what's your favorite series in the first round in the East?
So I think the Celtics will roll Atlanta. Now Trey's played really well against Boston this year. He's averaged 31 and 11 against Boston. So and Trey looked really good the other night. He's got to be consistent every night against Boston, but I think Boston will handle that series. Okay. The Knicks and Cavs are intriguing. I think the Nets and Sixers are very intriguing as well, but I like the Sixers to beat the Nets. I will say the Cavs-Knicks series is probably the most intriguing at that 4-5. Both teams, the Knicks kind of struggled towards the end of the year, but they didn't have Julius Randle. He's been banged up. I expect Julius Randle to be healthy and come back and be ready to go. The Knicks are a really good team, and Jalen Brunson is playing at all-pro NBA type of player. He's been great all year. The Knicks acquiring him when they wanted Donovan Mitchell is what's so fascinating about this series because Donovan Mitchell goes to Cleveland where he's been great. The size of Evan Mobley will be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. I think he's got a case to win Defensive Player of the Year. I ultimately don't think that he would get it. I actually think Jaren Jackson will probably get it from Memphis, but this matchup is really a fun one. Jared Allen is very underrated. I think he's one of the most underrated centers in the league. We had him when I was in Brooklyn. I think he's going to be such a factor in this series with his length. I like the Cavs getting out of the series, but I think this is another one that could go 6-7. I think the Knicks are that good. I do think they have all the pieces to get out of the series as well, but I just think Cleveland's firepower is so high when they're good. I think Karis LeVert is another underrated player in this series. 6'7" wing that is fully capable of giving you 25, 30 points. Now, look, the Knicks, Emmanuel Quickley's been playing really well, too. Another guy to watch in this series. Josh Hart is a big impact player for the Knicks. They got him in a trade, defensive stopper. He's got to be good for the Knicks, but I just think the Cavs have so much firepower, size, athleticism. They defend. They can protect the rim. They have shooting. I just think the firepower for Cleveland, I'll give them the edge in the series, but I think it is the most intriguing matchup of those East matchups.
I was going to ask you if you had to pick in each conference which lower seed would have the best chance of advancing. It's not that difficult of a question because I think Golden State.
Yeah. Right.
But then the Knicks. You like the Knicks? I mean, more than Brooklyn or.
I think some people will. I mean, it's going to be talked about so much just because it's LeBron and the Lakers. But that Lakers-Grizzlies series is really interesting. I just don't think the Lakers have enough shooting, and I don't think D'Lo is fully healthy. D'Angelo Russell. Now look, the Lakers. Like the trade that they made to acquire D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and I know they got Rui Hachimura. Like they have done a nice job of just adding to that roster, and they've upgraded the roster, and it's shown. And LeBron has his game the other night against Timberwolves. I mean, that was such an impressive performance in his 20th year playoffs. Everything riding on it, and he just steps up, comes through, has so many big plays down the stretch. That was an ugly fourth quarter. It was kind of a grinded out game. It was sloppy. It was ugly, and the Lakers find a way to win it. Grizzlies win healthy. There's been a lot of drama around them with Ja Morant, obviously. He's back. They look to be getting fully healthy as well at the right time, and Jaren Jackson is such a problem. I just don't. That matchup with Jaren Jackson and Anthony Davis, that is going to be a blast of a matchup. I give the edge to Jaren because he's been playing so well on both ends of the floor. I do think he's the defensive player of the year, in my opinion. He just makes so many things change defensively with his versatility. Kind of reminds me of Bam a little bit, only he's added so much to his game offensively, and when he's making shots, I just think he can really expose Anthony on the perimeter. So it's going to be a good matchup. I don't see an upset there, but that's one that's going to be talked about a lot.
Is Embiid the MVP?
Yeah, he'd be my MVP, I think. I mean, it's tough when you look at this because I do think that, like, Giannis Antetokounmpo, I still think I don't think he gets talked about enough, I'll be honest. Like, I always turn on these national shows, and I know Embiid is in a big market, and Embiid should be the MVP. Jokic has a case for sure. I think he's up there as well. It's a 3-horse race. To me, and I've seen all three of these teams live this year, and they make such an impact. All three of them are worthy of the MVP. Embiid is so efficient, and he's just an absolute force offensively. And his skill set at his size and his strength and his shooting, the shooting thing is what changes the game for Philly. With Embiid's ability to shoot the ball, like he just has such an array of skill, and it's so hard to guard. And defensively, he's been really good, and he's been fairly healthy. Giannis Antetokounmpo in person, though, when he's got it going, he's just a freight train downhill. He's so hard to guard. He's a physical freak. I mean, the Greek freak he is. He just, I think with Milwaukee, like, they are so good in terms of what they've put around Giannis. And like adding Jrue Holiday was a big get, in terms of adding him. Adding Jay Crowder, a really good veteran piece. The talent they had, Joe Ingles is another one they added. They got a lot of shooting around him. I think he is the most valuable player to his team, and why Milwaukee is so good, and why I think Milwaukee is so deserving of the one. But I do think when we talk about MVP, Joel Embiid has just been that good this year. I just think he's had the numbers show it. His consistency shows it. His impact on both ends of the floor speaks for itself. I mean, it's so hard to look at all three of these guys and think who's the MVP because all three have a case. But Embiid, I give the edge to a little bit. I just think if you're saying, do you want Joel Embiid or do you want Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's such a tough question. But watching those guys, Giannis to me is the toughest player to guard in the league.
Okay, so
I think he's the toughest matchup to try to game plan for.
So I'll use the NFL as a comparison. Okay, it doesn't matter what happens in a certain season. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL,
right?
But he's not going to win the MVP every year.
Every year, right?
That's just how it. That's just he might miss a couple of games. The media might fall in love with a certain player one year. Lamar Jackson has a year through the roof, and he just whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just because a guy didn't win the MVP doesn't mean he's not the best player. So it sounds like you're saying, is it true? Is this a true statement? Giannis is the best player. He's the best player in the NBA, but maybe Embiid deserves the MVP this year.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say. I mean, it's tough to like say that when Joel Embiid, averaged 33 points a game this year, right, and shot 55 from the field. I think from a regular season standpoint, like his rebounding percentage, his blocks.
But the separator is the title. Who's got a title, right?
The separator is the title. Yeah, for sure. And I think too with Giannis, like it's probably just something where I saw him have a 50-point game this year, and it was almost a quiet 50. It was wild. It was like you look up and you're like, man, Giannis has 47 points, and it's just because it's just so effortless to him when he turns it on. And I mean, the guy plays so hard in general, but like him downhill with the ball, and he can play with his back to the basket, and he can play in the mid range, and when he's shooting the ball, that just takes him to another level. But the thing with Embiid though is he's got such an array of being able to play off his jump shot, which is a little bit different in how you compare these two. But I just think with Giannis, like his ability to score the ball downhill, attacking, physicality, he takes 2-3 guys to the rim and guys are hanging on him. His length is such a problem. And just like when you're talking about a guy late in the year, the guy that's on the floor that's making the biggest impact in a game, I would love that Milwaukee Philly series. I think Giannis is such a problem for Embiid to try to match up against defensively. I think just Giannis, I give him the edge there of just his ability to take over a game. They both can, but I like Giannis more than Embiid probably.
I'm going to ask you just a kind of a prop question, and in no way am I asking you because of anything that I'm having to do with DraftKings Sportsbook. Marco didn't make me ask you this, so stop accusing me. Who will score more points in the series against each other, Ja Morant or LeBron James? I don't care about wins. I don't care about rebound. I don't care about nothing else. Who's going to score more points in this series, Ja Morant or LeBron James?
I think it'll be Ja. I think it'll be close, but I'll give the edge to. I think it'll be Ja. I think LeBron. I think LeBron could actually continue to just pad his stat sheets in terms of steals, blocks, passes, like in terms of the stat sheet stuffing, if you will. I think LeBron would be that guy, but
he also might go crazy one night and like score 50.
He might go nuts. He might go nuts, but I think Ja could go nuts too sometimes. Like it'd be hard to go against Ja with his ability to get to the paint, and I don't want to go against LeBron, but I just think Ja's the guy.
So you think he'll score more points?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Final question here. What's your dream matchup? You can't pick the 2-1 seeds.
Okay.
That's too much on. That's what we call a Nate Bukaty sitting on the fence. You can't do that.
Okay.
Give me and you can pick one of the 1 seeds.
Okay.
But give me your dream matchup. Strictly as a basketball fan, that you're going to get your popcorn. You're going to sit down on your couch with your lovely fiance, and you're going to say, I can't wait to watch this NBA Finals. Give me your dream NBA Finals matchup.
For me, it'll be a throw it back, run it back of Bucks Suns. I think would be mine. Giannis against Durant. Chris Paul back in the finals.
Okay.
A chance to win an NBA title. I think that's a great matchup.
That's what you want to see.
That's what I think that's what I would go with. I think
the next
Bucks
question
Suns.
is, what are we going to see? Then what's your prediction?
I like Bucks Suns, but I think Bucks Suns is what we're gonna see. Man, I don't want to go against the Celtics though either. Like I think the Celtics are really good, and
It's funny.
that's
it's
a
fun
tough.
to go against the Celtics.
That's a tough one. I think Boston in the finals would be an interesting conversation. I like the Suns out of the West though. I think it starts there. I don't see the Clippers pulling the upset. I think the Nuggets Suns. It's a bad matchup for the Nuggets. Should that take place?
A bunch of people just think, of course, Golden State's going to be healthy for the playoffs. And then
how could you go against Golden State?
Right, but because it could be when we're all like doing these mental gymnastics to pick other teams, and they just roll through like, why didn't we pick Golden State?
So here's your question about what dream matchup.
Yeah, like
the dream matchup comes before the finals.
Oh, okay,
can I say this?
Hear you. Of course.
It's got to be Suns Warriors, right? Durant against
Sure.
the Warriors. Can you like that matchup?
Just for Twitter.
Just for like that
Ladies and
matchup's
gentlemen,
amazing.
Kevin Durant's tweets post game.
Suns Golden State, like that is a fun matchup. That is a very fun matchup. That to me is the most like thrilling, exciting storylines everywhere. Durant against Steph. That would be a fun matchup again. Like if that would be a Western Conference type matchup. Down the road, Western Conference Finals kind of thing. That would be wild.
I'm sadistic, and so I want the Knicks to be up like 3-1, and then blow it to Cleveland just to see the reaction of the fans,
Yep.
like interviews on the street, and
so
I can read Knicks social media.
It's just funny too. Like you can look at all these matchups, and there's like a story like Trae Young. When the Hawks played the Knicks a couple years back in the playoffs, what happened in MSG?
That was hilarious.
He's got to go to Boston. Like, I mean, it's worse in TD in Boston in terms of their fans and like them getting on players. Like
sometimes for their own players, it's worse than Boston.
Exactly. Like that matchup with Trae Young and TD Garden with the Celtics, like that's a great one too. It's a great storyline. So there's so much. This is what makes the NBA playoffs fun. And we talked about this earlier this morning. Like years back, you would say, okay, wake me up in the finals when these two teams are matching up, right? If it's Cavs with LeBron and
this year.
Not this year. No, and the trades that were made at the deadline and Durant leading that charge with the Suns, it's just wild. Suns are a 4 seed. They're a 4 seed.
Now you got me thinking about the things he'll tweet during the Golden State series.
I wouldn't.
I
wouldn't sleep on Philly as the 3 in the East with Harden and Embiid and like. They have a lot of pressure on them in Philly of all markets. The Philly fans that they are expecting them to get back to the finals with this crew. That's another fascinating thing. I think they get through the Nets series, but then it gets fun after that.
And then like we talked about, like everyone's gonna want like ESPN is already passionately in love with LeBron James,
Shocker.
John Morant. That's
Shocker.
all
Shocker.
But hey, to their point,
it's a storyline.
I was asking who's going to score more. I'm going to tune in.
And let's be honest, what LeBron's doing in year 20, it's crazy. Like, I mean, he's still playing at such a high level. Like, so his dunk the other night in the Minnesota game, like, looks like LeBron from, his 3rd year in the league. Like, his verticality is still just like, man, he's so explosive.
He's guarding people that could be his children.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy to see him impact the game still in so many areas as a passer. And, like, I think he finished the year again, like, averaging 27, 10, and 6 or something like that. I mean, it's just, like, his production year in and year out and here in year 20 and his durability. I know he got banged up this year and got hurt, but, I mean, he's back. He's in the playoffs. He's still playing at a high level, and they're still dangerous. It's still AD. It's still LeBron. They need D'Lo to play better. That's still a fun series, that Lakers-Grizzlies series.
I also demand satisfaction for Quinn Snyder. So
Absolutely.
Go
Let's go. Hey, they're like they play a lot better with Quinn. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Quinn Snyder's one of the best coaches in the league.
Every time I bring that up, like Nate gives me funny looks. He's a good coach.
He's a great coach. He's an elite coach. He's not a good coach. He's an elite
Katie,
coach.
Go find him.
Yeah, I
gotta
go find Nate. I gotta go find Nate.
Because you know how it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I bring up Quinn Snyder, you know, but he turned out.
First of all, he took the job in season. He took the job in season. And then was like, everybody was like, oh, he's going to take another year off. And then he takes the Hawks job and starts coaching immediately. Like, and here they are.
I couldn't have
unbelievable.
Figured all this stuff out.
I got Steven riled up. This was my just.
I don't, and then because somebody, who was it? Alex Schiffer for the Athletic wrote an article.
Oh yeah.
About how Mizzou's staff with Quinn Snyder had 3 guys that helped change the NBA.
John Hammond, Igor.
And I've looked at it. I go, I love Alex Schiffer. He's a fantastic writer, but I've not mentally prepared myself to read this yet because I don't.
It's a great read. I mean? Like, it's a great read.
I'm sure that it is, but So will I go through it reading?
As we've talked about before, there could be a 30 for 30 on the Mizzou basketball program, dating back to when Norm Stewart was retiring. You could just rewind the clock on so many moments in Mizzou basketball history of the program.
You look at the staff that he had and what all the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Oh, man.
And the Tyler Hansborough woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Lane Odom, who was an assistant for Quinn, is now a scout with the Jazz. Quinn brought him to Utah. And
then his brother just lost to Mizzou in the NCAA tournament full circle. Let's go.
It's just amazing, like the amount of players too that ended up playing professionally whether overseas or in the NBA, and the talent that was on those Mizzou teams with Quinn. And I want you to read it, because then I want to have it's like when we've like when you've talked about Secession, and when you've talked about some of these shows that it's like you don't want to spoiler alert. I don't want to spoiler alert you.
I gotta read it.
But you got to read it. And there's so many things and Alex did a great job, and I think there's probably some things that might not have made the article.
Oh, I bet there's a lot of things that didn't make the article. I bet you got a list of them right now.
There's obvious things that didn't make the article. But I just think it's interesting that, and I can say this, just having worn the uniform at Missouri, I do think Mizzou should look long and hard of bringing Quinn Snyder back to Columbia, Missouri.
And so I was at that game in San Jose, the Elite Eight loss to Oklahoma, when Clarence Gilbert refused to hit a three and Arthur Johnson refused to make a free throw.
Free throws, man.
But even through all that time, it was one of those things. Like, I thought Mizzou was going to go on a run, because I'd watched the win the 2 nights before against UCLA, and Dan Gedzuric trying to guard Arthur Johnson, and so I'm watching that, and
great name.
I kept expecting. I didn't think Mizzou was going to lose until they lost. If that makes any sense? It wasn't one of those things where halftime like, oh, they're not going to win this game until the bitter end.
Okay, this is going to be a good question for you, because Mizzou fans have asked me this question. It's a hot topic. The Elite Eight team that you're talking about in San Jose with Arthur Johnson, Gilbert, those guys. The DeMarre Carroll, Leo Lyons, Elite Eight team.
Can't answer this.
Kim English, Marcus as rookies.
I won't answer.
You're not answering it?
I will, maybe.
Those two teams, because those two teams, I think, had a realistic chance to make a Final Four. That was a nasty team. That team was
Gilbert.
That was a great team.
Arthur Johnson, Ricky Paulding.
Ricky.
Right? I mean, right?
Ricky Paulding now living in Kansas City now, by the way, and retired after a long
the game.
career.
But I'll tell you what, the game that pisses me off the moment I think all the time about is the Elite Eight game. Why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? This was not what this podcast was about.
30 for 30.
Was the Elite Eight game is UConn.
This is therapy for yeah.
Remember? You remember he gets UConn. And
well, I remember.
Help me out here. I think Matty Lawrence had hit a big three.
And
either
to break his 1,000 point score.
Let's go. And then Kemba Walker came down at the end of the shot clock and made some kind of acrobat. It was great defense, stupid shot, and I was like, oh.
We came all the way back in that.
You remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Well, I just remember Hashim Thabit was their center and was you talk about rim protector, my goodness. And we did not play well in that first half. And here I go going down this rabbit hole.
Fine.
It's just darkness. But we came all the way back in that game. Justin Stafford was great. Keith Ramsey was great. They are like the unsung heroes of that game. Leo, or maybe it was DeMarre, was in foul trouble. But we did not play well in the first half. We played right into their hands from a game plan standpoint. And there were things our style of play was up tempo, fast paced, attack the rim, and they had a massive rim protector that just tattooed shots at the rim in the first half. Then we finally figured it out and adjusted, and Matt hit some big shots, and Kim played well in that game. But man, yeah, that UConn team was loaded, and they had Price and Sticks, and and obviously Kemba was great he was a freshman, I think.
After that game, I got loaded. Let me ask.
It's a tough flight home. Flight home.
You talk about bringing Quinn Snyder back to Columbia. What are the chances of him coming on this podcast? You think?
There's some things that can be done.
I had a good relationship with him. If you drop my name, we're good.
I
feel like
I think there's ways to notify him of wanting to have him on our podcast.
Right, and
there's ways to do this.
I used to have him on the show, and we had a good relationship. Then I used to cover a lot of games in Columbia.
Yep,
and we good. And so I think I get his reluctance to want to come back, but we're not. If we have him on, I'm not gonna. We're not gonna dig through all the other stuff. It's more of man. Look where you are now. You lived up to all the hype and the promise, and I want
my first time I went to Mizzou basketball camp, and it was Quinn Snyder basketball camp at Hearns. This was before the arena was. I think the arena was built, but it wasn't opened yet. And I remember just looking up to Quinn and Trayvon Bryant and Paulding and Rush and all these guys were idols to me now. And
Let's
now
have Tony Harvey
and
on
now,
the show.
and now oh gosh, Tony Harvey, wow. And then to think like now, I'm just as from an alumni standpoint of just these guys that, man, they were such a great team, and it just goes to show you like your alumni with your program, it matters so much, and Dennis Gates has talked about this because there's a deep pride of the history of the program. And like even these guys, talking to Josh Kroenke and talking to Paulding and talking to Rush, like when we were in school in 2008, 2012, and them watching our games together and like pulling for us and how much they loved our teams, like that's what makes, being a part of a program so special.
Kroenke to get involved in this NIL.
Hey,
Kroenke
he's
just-
got all these, and
need
he's got a lot of things going on.
I need him to have that going on.
Fair.
Start to line these players' pockets, all right?
Just knock on Lawrence Bauer's door.
LB.
Elbow.
So this all of a sudden this podcast became stupid. Let me tell you that right now.
Hey, we got a lot of things covered here. We got a lot of things covered.
You think Greg from Charlie Hustle's gonna enjoy the last 10 minutes of this podcast? No.
Mizzou fans need this though. They
I
need to
don't
go down
think
memory
so.
lane.
I don't
think.
know that they do.
I don't know if they do. That's fair.
Talk about Charlie Hustle before we say goodbye.
I am
please.
rocking Charlie Hustle gear right now. Just
Rocking
so
it.
you know, this is the most comfortable sweatshirt I own. They actually just doing a spring cleaning sale right now, 60% off items at the Charlie Hustle website. So make sure you check out the Charlie Hustle website.
Do it.
Big thanks to Greg Moore and Chase McNulty and everybody at Charlie Hustle. We went there together a couple weeks ago, checked out their offices here in KC. Got to get stocked up on your gear for the NFL draft.
I got a
coming up.
Nigerian Nightmare Christian Okoye t-shirt, so top that.
That's what I'm talking about. I just needed some KC swag to, on planes. I like to wear my KC swag, my Charlie Hustle gear.
He loves
So-
Kansas City. Nobody loves wearing shirts of their city more than people in
That
Kansas
is
City.
accurate.
Because we love
That is
KC.
accurate.
All right, man. That was a great podcast until the very end when you made me furious.
I
but
got to apologize. I
Right.
got Steven off the rails.
right, but until the next episode of House of Hustle, that's Jared Sutton. I'm Steven St. John, and remember, Kansas City is for hustlers.